Download the BCSN Plus app today. Local sports all the time. Visit bcsnnation.com for details. Discounts may apply.
So at the beginning of the show, we mentioned how today was the perfect week to come back because so much has happened over the past 7 days or so, and that includes the Catholic League. So we want to show you a graphic here. It is the Catholic League records among the top 6 teams coming into tonight. So starting with Central Catholic, best win over St. John's, railed the Titans, 5-2 record coming into today. St. Francis also beating St. John's, avenging that early season loss, also 5-2. Meanwhile, you have St. John's 8-3, more legs under it than any other team here. Key win early season over St. Francis, and then you have Brother Rice, Detroit Catholic Central, and of course UD Jesuit. So I'm going to toss up the question. Deon, we'll start with you. Who is the best team in the Catholic League right now?
I think looking at the graphic, I would go in that order. With the I'm going with Central Catholic. Okay. I think they've clearly proven they're the best team right now. But I like St. Francis and St. John's as 2A, 2B. I think we saw tonight what happened. But I'm going to go with Central Catholic, and the way they're playing right now. Hey, Rhett, what do you think?
No, I agree with you because not only did Central Catholic beat St. John's, and by the way, that game they handily beat St. John's.
Destroyed. Yes.
And it was, they got on them early. St. John's did make a run in that game, got at the 4. Got the 4 late before Central Catholic pushed it to a double-digit victory, but they were convincing in that ball game. And remember, they also beat Brother Rice. Mm-hmm. Right. And Brother Rice came in highly touted. A lot of people thought they were picked to win the league. So they got 2 key wins, beating Brother Rice and St. John's. I like Central Catholic. You thought with the loss of Isaiah Mack Russell, this team would take a step back a little bit, but it's been the opposite. They've taken a step forward. And a lot of it has to do with, obviously, Manny Johnson now being a senior, bigger, stronger, continuing to do what Manny Johnson does. But for me, Caden Kennard's been the guy who's really elevated his game in the absence of Isaiah Mack Russell, and they just haven't missed a beat.
Caden Kennard and the gentleman we're seeing right there, Langford. Langford has been a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't know much about him coming into the season. He's made a really good transition, knocking down jump shots, and you see Caden Kennard right there. You talk about guys who spent time in the weight room after the season. It was Caden.
You know what? And just look at the graphic of those teams again. I really think it's an eyelash. Really, even with Central in the top spot that Deon and I both think is the case, it's an eyelash. The margin of difference between a Central, Brother Rice, any of those teams you saw on the screen, except for maybe UDJ. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at it, like already, St. John's beat St. Francis. St. Francis came back and beat St. John's. Central beat St. John's. And then Central still plays St. Francis twice, coming up next week being the first round matchup. But Detroit Catholic Central beat Central Catholic. So you can't count them out either.
So let me ask you this, and I know because Justin and I, we touched on it a little bit, but I didn't really get to cook like I needed to.
The floor is yours.
Right now. So if you take Horton off of St. Francis, mm-hmm. you take Race Kowalczyk off St. John's, how good are they? That's the equivalent of losing Isaiah Mack Russell.
I agree.
Who's averaging like 21 plus a game where he is right now. Mm-hmm. So you took one of the top players in Ohio. He's one of the top 2 guys last year. Mm-hmm. And they're still doing what they do. Credit to Coach Mike Floyd.
Yes.
He figured out how to galvanize the troops. Those guys are playing together as a unit. And even when the Lima Senior game, people are going to say, oh, they lost that game. They were up for 3 quarters and 2 minutes in that game in the 4th, and they end up losing at the end. So you tell me who's done a better job with less.
No, I agree. That's why we got them in the top spot. That's why we think they're in the top spot.
Well, why did it take you guys so long to catch on to Central Catholic? Of course, losing IMAC, of course, was a huge loss, but it seems like we're getting on the Central Catholic train a bit late compared to what we thought of maybe a St. John's or St. Francis earlier.
Because when you lose a double-double, you don't know what you have. Yeah. And you didn't know that Caden Kennard was going to go from here to here this year, consistently in the biggest games. Manny's being Manny, but you said Langford.
Brothers.
Yeah, Carruthers.
The complimentary guys.
And don't sleep on Carruthers and his value to this team. He might only get 4-6 points a game, but he's getting 8, 10, 12 rebounds a game, keeping possessions alive, giving your team extra possessions, and rebounding, keeping opponents to one shot only on the defensive end.
And he's an eraser. I watched him the other night. He had 15 points the first quarter. But the way he changes shots when you go inside, I mean, there's not a better guy you're going to see. 6'7", very long, maybe 7-foot wingspan. He does so much for that team. And we're forgetting, Dre Wardrop hasn't been there.
Yeah.
Wait till he comes back. That's a guy that can average 9 to 11 points a game. So they're going to be strong going forward. But to your point, we didn't see it coming because it's like when you lose one of the top players in Ohio.
Naturally, you're going to think you're going to regress.
Yes.
But Central Catholic doesn't seem to have done that. But I want to touch on St. John's as well, because we haven't talked about St. John's. If you're the Titans, you get blown out by Central Catholic. Of course, you have the win over St. Francis, but the Knights only played 2 games when that game took place. So if you're the Titans right now, if you're Rhett Kowalczyk, if you're Ethan James, why should you believe you're going to come out on top of the Catholic League this year?
Well, and I'm going to go back to the St. Francis game. They were down by as much, I think it's 16 or 17. Came back and almost won that game in the pit. And whenever you have a guy, like you say, Rhett Kowalczyk, you got, Ethan James, those guys, they're a good team. They're very solid, well coached, and they usually play their best ball the second half of the year.
And I agree with everything. They are talented. They got a go-to guy that gets you 20 plus. Ethan James emerged in the scoring in his scoring this year, point guard, quickness. My concern with St. John's right now in this 3-week stretch that they've had lately is in the Central Catholic game, you got flat out outplayed. You got out effort in that game, and you were down double digits on 2 different occasions. You go to the St. Francis game, a game that you won handily on your home floor early in the year. You played hard. We said that way. They outplayed St. Francis from an effort standpoint.
And we had it here on Game Day Nation.
In a physicality standpoint. You come back a couple weeks later in the pit, they're down double digits again before they make that run. So right now, for St. John's, it's not about what you can do. It's about what you're currently doing. You're too rocky right now in the ebbs and flows of a basketball game. It's too many highs, too many lows. They got to even that out. So when you make your run, great. But then when you give up a run, you're not going here. You're able to maintain it, absorb it a little bit, and then you can make your run again. Because right now they're just getting beat with too many big runs right now in games, and it's just too much to overcome. So are they capable? Absolutely, they're capable. But they got to iron out some things.
I was going to say, but St. Francis, because I'm pretty sure
that's where I was going to go next. Because
Yeah.
Central Catholic has been consistent. St. John's, kind of a rocky start. You have a St. Francis team that has had guys that have been sick, kind of haven't played as many games earlier in the year, but now the Knights seem to be catching their stride as much as anybody in the area. So where does St. Francis lie for you?
I think they're just as good as any other teams we talked about, because initially my concern with St. Francis, they didn't have a point guard, a true point guard. They got good guards, obviously, when you talk about Polanitz, and the other kid, Hornby.
He's back.
Very, very good guards. I mean, Poland is a Division I recruit. But, to me, when I watched them, they struggle getting into their sets. Now they figured it out. Credit to Coach Kaczmarek. They have size. Trayshawn Chenault, he's doing an outstanding job. They're the biggest team in our area. They play that zone. They're figuring it out. So they have an opportunity, but my concern with them is giving up the leads. When you go up 17, hey, we're watching Indiana right now. They go up 14, they end up going up 35. That's the type of team that you have to be going forward, because they're going to have a tough way to go once the sectionals and districts start. They're Division II, I believe, right? So they get an opportunity. They're going to see some guys, so they have to get that figured out.
Well, Central and St. John's are going to see each other in the tournament.
That's going to be tough.
Now, St. Francis, Central's Division III.
Yeah.
So in the tournament. So, so what are we saying after we go through all? What are we saying? We're saying that Central Catholic, St. John's, St. Francis, 3 of our teams here in the city of Toledo in the Catholic League, who the last couple of years have been at the bottom of the Catholic League, all 3 of them are in the top 4 right now with a chance to win it. And don't forget about DCC, though, because DCC knocked off Central earlier in the year, and Brother Rice is as good as anybody, too. Central knocked them off. We'll see how St. John's and St. Francis handle them when they play. It's an eyelash difference between these teams.
Yeah,
it's matter who's hot that night. It's who's hot at the time, maybe in a 2-week sequence that we keep doing this with these teams. And it's not that we're non-committal, it's just the facts. And we're here to tell you the facts, and that's what they are.
And it's about time we're showing some love. We always show love, but I feel Northwest Ohio in general, we don't get the love we deserve. Football, basketball, You know, now, and that Detroit Catholic League, we were struggling winning games just a few years ago. Now, like you said, we're at the top. We have very good teams. In my opinion, if they get on a good run, they may make it down.
So when we watch these teams continue to play, because they all have big-time games ahead of them. Central Catholic has St. Francis twice. They play Perrysburg. They play Margaretta, who's one loss, I think, right now. You got St. John's. They still play Central one more time. They got DCC, Brother Rice, St. Ed's. You know that they're not in that league.
So all these teams are going to be tested.
They're all going to be tested. So we talk about our list being fluid. There's still a lot of chances for fluidity. But I think as we move forward too, and the X factors on these teams. Okay, scouting reports are going to say, take care of Caden Kennard and Manny Johnson. Take care of Alan Horton and Pulinance. Take care of Race Kowalczyk and Ethan James. But we've seen with Central Catholic, Langford has stepped up, right? For St. John's, Coy Hammock has had moments.
Yeah.
For St. Francis, Chenault had a big night the other night. Who are those X factors that are going to continue to develop under the radar a little bit that comes up big in those moments? We've seen it early. We're going to continue to see it. Whoever does it best is going to find themselves on top of that, of one of the best leagues in the Midwest. Yeah.